So let's begin with what's your value proposition or what's your elevator pitch to your key customers?
Yeah. So KNOLSKAPE is solving a 150-year-old problem, which is that learning is broken. Today, if you look at how learning gets done in organizations, there's a so-called expert who comes in, delivers a session. The rest of us are supposed to absorb it and apply it at work. We know that that doesn't work anymore. The experience of learning is simply not there in the current process. So what we are doing at KNOLSKAPE is we are trying to bring back the experience in the learning process through gamification, anytime, anywhere, and talent analytics. And we work with about 200 plus clients across 15 countries, and we produce some stellar results in terms of capability development for employees in this new age.
How do you differentiate between then a small and medium enterprise customer to a large enterprise customer?
Right. So that's a tricky question, especially for a startup, right? So where do you start? So interestingly, what we have done is the 200 clients that I spoke about. Even as a startup, we started with the largest of organizations. You name all the Fortune 500 companies. We've made an entry, but along with that comes the responsibility of customization, right? So large organization has the resources and the timelines to support something that is unique for them. So one needs to be able to cater to that kind of a request. Whereas when you go to a small and medium enterprise, there the speed is of the essence. They may not have the internal bandwidth, so they make do with what fits well. Even if it is 80%, they run with it, right, and then fill in for the rest. So I think that's the biggest difference between the two sectors. And also the go-to-market is very different. With a large organization, you need to be able to do deep account mining, whereas small, medium enterprises, you can even serve them online without any touch at all. So those are strategic decisions to be made from an HR tech provider standpoint.
And you've been in this gamified learning space for a while now. So tell us a little bit about how do you see the whole e-learning space evolving from an Indian context?
Okay. So e-learning as a trend has been around for some time, right? It's not new. And a lot of people are questioning the efficacy of e-learning also. So even worldwide, when you take some big names, the completion rate on e-learning is in single digits. So with empowerment to the learner, the cost is if there is no motivational construct around it, you will find issues around adoption. How many of us would like to go to the gym? All of us. How many of us actually go to the gym? There's a big difference, right? The same phenomenon happens with e-learning as well, right? So there is no motivational construct for people to actually do it, right? It's there, they know it, but actually doing it is a different question. So that's where gamification comes into play, because gamification as a mechanism is all about motivating individuals to do things that are actually right for them, right? So I see that going forward, gamification is going to be a big trend, anytime, anywhere. So people don't want to be constrained inside the classroom. In fact, we learn all the time. So why is learning only happening inside the classroom? So how can we enable learning on mobile or any other device for that matter? And also analytics is a big one. So it's not just about going to a learning program, but the million dollar question that people have for you is, what is the ROI, right? So today we're not able to answer it because we're not capturing any of these learning interventions digitally, right? But as things become more and more digital, we'll be able to capture these data points and come back with something that answers that question on ROI.
Given your experience so far, if you were to address some of the HR leaders or learning leaders on things that they need to evaluate or consider when they are looking for a partner, what would those be?
Yeah, so firstly, I think the realization and acknowledgement that HR tech is there's disruption happening because of digital. So in a way, there's a need for HR leaders to basically acknowledge that, every other function within the organization is getting touched by digital. And HR probably in many ways is still not that evolved, right? So once you start with an acknowledgement, you'll then start to see possibilities. And after that, a lot of what needs to happen internally, right? And There was a brilliant quote that someone had today in the session that the only trend that they see with HR tech is that almost all of them will fail, right? So the failure rate is enormously high because it's not because of technology, it's because of the adoption, right? It's very easy to cut a check and get the technology in, but what about readiness capability of people internally to adopt it and use it on a daily basis, right? So I think both sides of the equation we need to carefully evaluate.
So design thinking is also something that we've been talking about through these 2 days of the conference. So can you tell us a little bit about how you've using some of the design concepts in your design?
Sure. So there's a funny quote that somebody had in one of the sessions on design thinking. They said design thinking is a fad. It's a useful fad, right? While I agree with that to an extent because there's so much buzz around design thinking that anyone and everyone you speak to seems to be doing something with design thinking. But I think there's something fundamental that's happening because of which design thinking is becoming not a fad. I think going forward, it is one of those essential skills that companies need to, or way of thinking that companies need to embrace. And the reason is this: for the longest time, I think companies have focused on the process. Efficiency was the name of the game, right? So how do you basically industrialize? How do you scale up so that everyone gets the same kind of an experience? But with design thinking and especially in the digital age, each one of us wants a personalized experience. So now, how do you use technology to not just think about experience, efficiency, but how do you think about experience, right? And at a scale where it can be broadcast to the size of one, n equals one, right? So that's the whole premise of design thinking, and I find it extremely exciting as a topic because finally the key stakeholders are getting to the center stage, not the people who are organizing the show, but who is it supposedly for, right? They are getting into the center stage.
What are some of the expectations that you had or you have from a conference like TechHR?
So, firstly, meeting a lot of people. With people comes ideas, right? You tend to exchange a lot of ideas, not just with the client stakeholders or prospects, but also with other companies here. There's a lot that's happening that we can learn from. So, last 2 days have been exceptional in terms of learning for us. What are some things that we are doing right? What are some things perhaps we could do better? And also all the sessions that were conducted, there were very good sessions on storytelling, on innovation, design thinking. So I think Esther and team have really caught the pulse of the industry and very well organized. I'm quite happy with the show here.
Now, the last question is that that we have about 50 plus exhibitors here, all from the HR tech space. So, can you tell us about which are the ones that have caught your attention personally?
The one that caught my attention is just down this aisle, Kilo Tech. So they are trying to solve, I think, an important problem. And the problem is that with the bell curve going out and performance getting measured very differently, it needs to be done a lot more real time. It needs to be done not annually but more frequently. And with that fundamental change comes the need to change the systems and processes as well. So I think they've attempted to create something that's very useful in that space.